Hello everyone and welcome back to another average review. Happy Father's Day everyone. Today I'm gonna be reviewing the Marvel Legends What If Hydra Stomper. Why do I mention that it's Father's Day other than, it being nice to mention that holiday? Well, this is actually one of my dad's figures and he's given me permission to review it today. Of course, afterwards, I have to give it back to him, though. Looking at the box, though, it's the fairly standard, now unfortunately retired, Marvel Legends Deluxe packaging. Although it's actually larger, as you can see, I can't even fit the full thing on camera, even, at a higher height and from a greater distance than my usual recording setup. But you can see it has the Disney Plus and What If logo along with the Hydra Stomper name. On the side, we have, some art of the Hydra Stomper from the show. And on the back, we have a expanded version of that image along with a bio and, of course, the name. Nothing special here besides the fact that there is a little logo of the Watcher's head on the top. But hey, it's a pretty nice box. So hey, let's carefully open it and get the figure out. Alright, getting the Hydra Stomper out of the packaging, and I gotta say, I'm a pretty big fan. I actually really liked the first Captain Carter episode of What If, even if, she became very, very overused in the later What If seasons. But yeah, the original episode was a lot of fun, especially since I was a big fan of the first Captain America movie. And I especially liked Steve still having a major role in the story by becoming, the Iron Man equivalent as the Hydra Stomper. I think it's kinda neat that no matter the circumstances, Iron Man and Captain America will in some way work together and still be heroes side by side. Hey, moving on to the figure itself, it is a beautiful rendition of the Hydra Stomper from, like I said, that episode of What If, which had an amazing design. I love the left leg and this side of the torso having the ladders to climb up into the suit since, it's so big, along with all the bolts and blocky bits, which really does sell that this is a big, bulky, sorta prototype for the Iron Man armor. I love the shade of green and white star here. They have a very, obviously militaristic and tank-like vibe, but I do like that the star on the chest still keeps one element from Captain America's original design, while still obviously being, Iron Man. It's a lot more simple than your usual live-action or MCU figures, but that does match with the show's art style, so I'm fine with it. I love this jetpack on the back, too, even if the figure itself does have a bit of trouble balancing. Still, this jetpack is fantastic. The detailing and the sculpting, along with the paintwork on these exhausts, especially how burnt and charred they look, is amazing. I love how this suit also looks a lot like the comic version of the Mark I. With the belt, helmet, and especially this antenna on this side of the suit are all dead ringers from the original Mark I from the comics, which I think is really fun, and once again, this is meant to be a super early version of the Iron Man suit in a world where I think Iron Man doesn't exist, or at the very least, doesn't exist yet. That's also saying nothing of the size of this figure. It is massive. Just look at it compared to a regular Iron Man. He looks downright puny compared to the Hydra Stomper. So yeah, if you can't tell, I really like the sculpting and design on this figure. The paintwork, there isn't much, but it's done very well. There's no real paint slop anywhere, no mistakes really from what I see. So yeah, the sculpting and paintwork is pretty much a perfect replica on this guy. But hey, sculpting ain't everything. Let's see how good this Hydra Stomper is at stomping Hydra with the articulation. Now, the head is on a pretty standard, dumbbell joint in the neck. He can actually look up a pretty dang fair amount. I mean, that's really good. Can look down, spin his head all the way around, and tilt side to side. His arms can spin around, but they are blocked a bit by the jetpack. But they can also hinge up and aren't that limited by the shoulder pad since it's very flexible, so you can actually raise his arm above 90 degrees, which is really, really nice. He's got bicep swivel, which gets you 360-degree turning, along with single jointed elbows with a little bit under a 90-degree bend. I would have probably liked a 90-degree bend, but I can see why it isn't super feasible, actually, you know what? It's pretty dang close and is only limited by this big gauntlet right here. He, of course, has the standard Marvel Legends wrists that can spin around and hinge back and forth. The waist articulation is accomplished with just one ball joint, and yeah, there isn't much to speak of at all. Not really any tilt or forward and back, but you do get a pretty good amount of twist, which is nice. Now, the hips are kinda weird, because they are the standard Marvel Legends ball-jointed hips, but when I try to move them forward, they always just fall back down. I don't get why. And it's only with the kick forward. The split? Pretty fine. Obviously, it's not much, but for a figure this big and bulky, you can't expect it to be the most dynamic thing ever. He's also got, the thigh cut right here, which gives you a pretty good amount of turning, along with single jointed knees that, with a bit of struggling, get a 90-degree bend. You also have Marvel Legends ankle articulation, which can hinge backwards, forwards, pivot a little side to side, but there's also the separate piece right here, which gives you a bit of swivel, although not much, because of these ankle guards right here. So yeah, this figure is very, very bulky, but he still gets a pretty fair amount of articulation. Now, I do gotta admit, I have one complaint that's a bit more miscellaneous, because it's not related to anything like articulation or sculpting, or at least, maybe it doesn't have to do with that. This figure really likes falling over. I mean, seriously. I think it's because there isn't much at the back of the feet to, keep him balanced, so he ends up falling backwards pretty easily, or just, losing his balance. So, this Hydra Stompers are a bit of an issue. Moving on to the figure comparisons, though, and of course, we gotta start with the standard male and female comparisons, Renew Your Vows, Spider-Man, and Spinneret. And yeah, as we saw with that Iron Man earlier, this Hydra Stomper really towers over any regular-sized Marvel Legends. And yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of that, since this suit was massive in the What If episode. But hey, for the two main universe versions of the guy piloting this suit, we have the 20th anniversary and Endgame versions of Steve Rogers' Captain America. But hey, for two of Steve's most important war buddies in the comics, we have Bucky Barnes, specifically the Hasbro Winter Soldier version from the Crimson Dynamo wave, and Nick Fury Sr. from the Toy Biz Marvel Legends line. Yes, the original Nick Fury from the comics was a white guy who smoked cigars. If you're wondering, Nick Fury in the movies was based on the Ultimate Marvel Universe version of Nick Fury, who was purposefully drawn to look like Samuel L. Jackson. Which, yeah, it makes sense why they casted him for Nick Fury in the MCU. But hey, for Steve's greatest nemesis in both the comics, movies, and this What If episode, we have the Zemnu Wave Red Skull. But hey, for the other half of what the Hydra Stomper is an amalgam of, we have the 616 and Ultimate Marvel versions of Iron Man. But for the two Iron Man armors that were definitely the main inspiration for this suit, we have the comic Mark I and the Toy Biz version of the Hulkbuster. I gotta say though, due to its similarities to the Hulkbuster and also its obviously militaristic theming, I think if this wasn't just meant to be a World War II Iron Man from an alternate universe, I feel like this could be something that the US military, mainly General Ross of course, would create to, capture and fight the Hulk. So, hey, if you're wondering how that would look, here he is with the comic and MCU versions of the Incredible Hulk. Pretty crazy that this Hydra Stomper towers over both versions of the Hulk. But if you prefer your Hulks a little more red, then, well, here you go. But hey, for yet another armor that this Hydra Stomper reminds me of, we have the MCU Ironmonger. They actually both kind of have the same idea. Take the Mark I armor, more so the comic version for the Hydra Stomper and the MCU version for Ironmonger, and just bulk them up, make them massive, and give them some pretty heavy weaponry. It's also pretty interesting how different they look while having really, really similar ideas. But hey, as is tradition, here's the What If Hydra Stomper with Hitmonkey and Goliath. Alright, now that we're done with all the comparisons, it's time to move on to the accessories. Now, I'm not sure if the jetpack on the back should count as an accessory, since, it's literally just part of the design, like an integral part of it, but, it was a separate piece in the box, so maybe? Either way, it came in 3 pieces, the actual backpack and these 2 rockets right here, which do actually move back and forth like so, which is a pretty nice touch. Another nice thing to see is these massive repulsor blast effects. They're pretty much just the regular Iron Man repulsor blasts, but, well, yeah, bigger. The obvious place to plug them is, into the rockets, so, you get the sort of flying effect with the massive jetpack on this armor, which, yeah, it works pretty well. There are also peg holes on the bottom of the feet that I don't actually think these repulsor effects actually fit into, since, the pegs are way bigger. They don't fit onto the open hand, since they don't actually have repulsors, and they also don't fit onto this gun, but this one over here, the lower one, does fit, but it's pretty awkward since it's kind of just like rubbing up against the hand and also the regular gun. But in case you're wondering, a regular Iron Man repulsor blast effect does fit onto the right gun arm. In terms of hands, though, this Hydra Stomper does come with a pair of gripping hands that he's packed in with, but he, of course, comes with a pair of fists. So, yeah, nothing really special with the accessories, but it's pretty much everything you need for the Hydra Stomper, which is pretty dang nice. Alright, time for the least fun part of the video, the price of this guy. But I do actually have some good news. The aftermarket price is way cheaper than what the original retail price is, because the original retail price for this figure was like $50. Luckily, though, you can find it on eBay for around $25 to $30, and that's about how much my dad found it for at a local flea market, about $30. Which, yeah, I think that's a far more fair price for this figure compared to $50. So, overall, what are my thoughts on the Marvel Legends Hydra Stomper? Well, I gotta say, this figure is very, very close to being the perfect Hydra Stomper. The sculpting is amazing. The paintwork, super accurate to the show. For the most part, the articulation is, well, serviceable for a suit this bulky. The accessories are great, and this thing is massive. It fittingly towers over most other Marvel Legends. But There's one major issue that holds this figure back from being pretty much perfect. The feet are super unstable and leads to this figure having very, very poor balance. So, just because of that one issue, which is a very major issue, mind you, I will be giving the Marvel Legends What If Hydra Stomper a 9 out of 10. If that one issue was fixed, I'd say this figure would be perfect for what it is. Don't get me wrong though, this figure is spectacular, and I think it would be hard-pressed to say that this isn't the best figure from the Legends What If line. So hey, if you've made it to this point in the video, first of all, thank you obviously, and second of all, have a great Father's Day, 'cause you deserve it. Bye-bye!